Welcome back to the Nurse Inquiry Mentoring Program. My name is Nicolette Hogue, and today I'm excited to talk to Beverly Murphy about poster presentations and some considerations that we should have as we start creating our posters. Welcome back, Beverly. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back and glad to be a part of this nurse mentoring program. You're doing a wonderful job, and I appreciate you bringing me on today.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about posters today, and I titled this "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly," because I have seen some very good posters, but I've also seen some bad ones and some horribly ugly ones. The ones that I actually use when I'm doing a hour-long presentation, there I have many samples. I have permission to use them. In fact, one person actually makes some ugly samples up. I think he really gets a kick out of making ugly poster samples up, so we use those. But we're here to talk about how to do some good posters today for the Nurse Inquiry Mentoring Program. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. The first screen I wanted to bring up is this screen. And this is a screen that shows you where you can find information on posters on our website. If you look at the top, you'll see the guides.mclibrary.duke.edu getting published slash posters. If you go to that URL, that is a spot on our website where we talk about how to get published, period. But there is a one tab that is about posters specifically, and that's what we're talking about today. If you look at the bottom of this page, you will see down here where the big blue arrow is a presentation that I did. It's an hour-long presentation, and it's actually posted on the School of Nursing's website, but it's also posted as a link from our website. And whenever you get the opportunity, I would go back and try to look at that presentation. It is an hour long, but it gives you a lot of information about posters that I can't possibly give you in this 15-minute presentation that I'm going to do today. Plus, I go over a lot of different samples of posters and show you all the different types of varieties and the creativity you can have in doing a poster, other than maybe some typical ones that you've seen. But we don't have time to do all of those. So if you get a chance, and I try to make it kind of interesting for you so I won't bore you to death when you go back doing that hour-long presentation. But if you want to go back and look at that, I do advise that you might want to go back and look at that at some point. You'll also see on the right hand side, you'll see we have various templates available for you to use if you want to download. And this template here is a very clean template that I made for people to use if they want to start out with the template so that they have headers and everything already in there. The blocks are already in there, and all you have to do is change the names. That header is going to look a little bit more cleaner than the one you may typically get in your department that won't have all those divisions and things in it. So you might want to kind of start with that template. And I have based that template on the standard template that is given out. So you can use that. So that's what we have on this page. So when you have a chance, please go back and look at the full presentation. Please make use of this page. And I've given Nicolette a handout, a tip sheet to give you. So this information will be on there that you can go back and find it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about posters. And you see that ugly poster in that with that X on. If you saw that in real life, it would probably make you faint. So I'm glad it's just a little small presentation. It's a little bigger in my big presentation. But posters typically, what I find the most difficult and the most disturbing about the ugly ones are there's way too much stuff going on. There's too much text. There's not enough graphics. There's too many colors or different font sizes. You don't know whether to start left from right to read the poster, and you miss the emphasis of what a poster should be, which is what is the work? What did you do, and why is the work important? It's pretty much a graphical representation of your work. A lot of people will do a poster because they may think it's easier than doing a paper or maybe doing a platform presentation. So a lot of people are invited to submit a poster presentation at a conference, and that's usually how I get involved. People want to go to a conference, they have a poster they want to do, and they'll contact me, and then we'll sit down and we'll try to make their poster be a reality. If you can think it up in your head, I can make it look good on paper or on cloth, which is what we use now, primarily what I use now for posters. So all you have to do when you sit down is really come up with a thought or an idea of what you want that poster to be. And usually you do because you've had a project that you worked on, but you may not know what the format is. You may not know how you want to adjust things and move things around. And I can help you with that. But your message is should be succinct. We want to state it. You want to look at your poster pretty much going from the left to the right in most cases. You don't want to divide things like methods. You don't want methods at the bottom of one column and then it's continued at the top of another column. You want to kind of try to keep things together, which is why you might have to reformat the way your poster looks. You can do it in columns, you can do it in blocks. There are many ways that you can do it. But at the end of the day, you want to probably do a focus on your recommendations and conclusions because that's usually a lot of what people want to look at the end of the day. And if you're in a big room and people there, lots of people there, they're walking around, they're looking at posters, you have to grab them in the first few minutes with the title of your poster and the look of your poster. So they'll stop and look at it, but they may not be close enough to really see. A lot of people will stand back. There may be a lot of people crowded around it. So in that case, you have to make sure that it's big enough for people to actually see, that they can read the title, they can read some of the information, they can know who you are and know how to get back in contact with you. So you want to make it a big illustrated presentation or illustrated abstract of your total work. And usually if you're doing a scientific poster, you're going to follow some format, methodology, conclusions, introduction, background, that type of thing. Sometimes that might change depending on what the criteria calls for in the conference that you're going to, what your project called for, those type of things. But those are all flexibilities that you can work with. So you want to really use that text sparingly. You want to focus more on graphical content. You want to illustrate what you want to say, but in a graphical way. And when you're using PowerPoint to use it, which is what I recommend, there are various things like word art that you can use to do that. You can make shapes that have words in them, and that will be a graphical representation with color rather than just having words. If you wanted to use bullets, you can make bullets in any type of thing. I did one poster where the bullets were actually little kidneys. I did another poster where the bullets were actually the breast cancer awareness month ribbon, the little pink ribbon. So you can put some color and some creativity in your poster, even if it's a standard format. You can be you. You can put some of those little elements in there without getting sidetracked and making it something that's not acceptable. So the big thing is to use your text, use bullets, don't have long paragraphs of words because nobody reads them. You need to have it kind of spaced out so somebody can come through and read it. And the bigger you can make the font in your poster, the better. You want to make it as big as you possibly can because looking at a poster, people think sometimes that 12 point is okay, but if you were to look at this, those letters are not 12 point. And if you're standing far away, here's a 12 point. When you get down closer to the end of this, you're not going to be able to see that. So you need to really make your font size large. We do have some kind of standards in terms of font size that we talk about, but the larger, the better. That's what I say always. The larger, the better. But be consistent with your font. If you have text in your a poster, you don't want one to be 30 and the other to be 40. You want it to be pretty much consistent. You can change some of it for headers and things like that, but you don't want to confuse the user's eyes by changing the size too much and also changing the font too much. I always say use two fonts maybe, but don't use a whole lot of different fonts and don't use Comic Sans. That's a font that you definitely want to kind of stay away from with the poster. So you want it to be something that you can kind of read when you're coming up. You got the size, you got the color, you grab the person in, you want to be able to follow what they did, and you want to let the graphics tell the story of what's happening. So if you use things like charts and graphs, which you can easily make, um, they can be really expandable, going from Excel to PowerPoint, because those are all kind of in the same family of programs. So if you do a graph in Excel, for example, you can make that a visual in PowerPoint very easily. You can size it, you can change the colors of it, and you can do things like that. So if you're working and you're doing a project and you want to use Excel, you're going to be able to translate that very easily into a PowerPoint, because those programs work very well together. So you want to make sure, if you're going to use graphs and charts and things like that, that you kind of stay away from the three-dimensional ones, because they don't work very well unless you're going to be doing an online poster. You want to stay with your bar graphs, your bar charts, those type of things. Those work really, really well. But at the end of the day, you want to have images, and you want those images to be high quality images. I usually tell people, when you're doing a project, keep a camera around and start to take pictures, because if you have ownership of what you're taking, you don't have to worry about copyright, you don't have to worry about those types of things, because you own that property that you're making. So just take pictures along the way. People pictures are always good, but make sure you get permission from people when you're doing that. But that's always good, because you want action in your posters, and you want to be able to visually display what you're doing while putting your little words with your little bullets, under the captions and things like that. So it's always a good idea to keep a camera around. Take some good high quality pictures, because you might want to need to size them down. The pictures that are on the website don't work very well. Those little teeny pictures are only going to look very bad, poorly, when they show up in a poster. So you don't want to do that. So the design, I've talked a little bit about the text and the fonts, the design. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the size of the poster, because that's very important. Whenever you decide to do a poster and it's based on a conference, they're usually going to give you some criteria. They will usually tell you what size that poster should be to fit the boards that they have. Sometimes the boards will be 4 by 8. That's probably the longest or the largest board that you could probably ever have at a conference. But sometimes, even if that board is a 4 by 8, you might have half of the board, because you might be sharing the board with somebody else that came to the conference. So you won't have the 4 by 8, you have a much smaller version. Now, the width is kind of very different from the height, because your height will be the same if you're sharing that board, but your width will be different because you'll have half the board. And you also have to think about the fact that when you have a board, I don't know if you are familiar, but sometimes you'll have like a little silver border or something around that board, and you have to take into consideration the inches that that will take up, especially when you're getting ready to paste your poster down. If you make it all the way up to the top, then you only got an inch left from that silver, then it's not going to work out very well. So the size is very important. Now, the reason why we want to think about size, especially when PowerPoint is concerned, is because PowerPoint will only go up to 56 inches. That's the largest that you can actually go up to. So if you want a poster that, say, to fit a 8 foot by 4 foot board, I would make that poster be 84 inches, which is 7 feet, by 42 inches, which is 3.5 feet. And that'll fit a 4 foot wide by 7 foot high board very nicely. But what you have to do is you have to decrease that size, cut that size in half. And then when you get ready to print it, you say, I want it printed in the full size. And then that way, everything is proportional. Nothing shrinks or nothing gets out of whack. Your font will be much bigger, of course, when it's twice the size, but it'll be proportional. So let's say, for example, you did want to do a poster for a 4 by 8 foot board. You would have a poster that would be 42 inches high by 21 inches wide. And so when you got ready to print it, you would say, well, I want it to print at 84, which would be twice, 2 times 42. And you want to print it at 42 inches, which is twice times 21. And that will end up to be 7 feet by 3.5 feet. If you do the math, it's all in the math. If you do the math, it might sound hard, but it's really a lot easier than what I'm explaining. But at the end of the day, when you go to print it, you want to print it twice the size, which means when you look at your pictures, you have to look at it at 200% because it's going to be twice the size. So if you look at your pictures in 100%, they won't look the same. And that's why people will often you'll see fuzzy pictures or pixelated pictures. It's because they haven't looked at it in the size that it's going to be when it's printed. So that's why those pictures on the web don't work very well because they're very tiny. So when you size them up and make them bigger, then they look really pixelated. So you want to make sure that you got your size right. If you start with one size and you end up with another size, PowerPoint's going to give you two options on how to adjust that. It's either going to say fit everything that I have or maximize it. I'm going to suggest that you say fit everything that you have because it'll take what you have and then it'll put it in the size that you want, but you'll have to go back and adjust it. You'll have to make your font bigger. You might have to make your boxes bigger. Maximize will do the same thing, but it'll put it off your size probably, and then you have to make it smaller. So it just either way, you're going to have to go back and make some adjustments. Either way, you will. But I think that if you do it to fit, it probably works better. And when you print your poster at the end of the day, you want to print it as a PDF file and send it off to whoever you're printing it with because that will keep your poster from moving around. I know sometimes your print is like, oh, this moved, this not the same place. That's because it didn't have it in a final format. You don't want to send it in a PowerPoint format or anything like that. You want to send it in a PDF format because you know exactly what it's going to look like and you know it's not going to move. Things are not going to move around. So whether you print it on paper or whether you print it in a cloth version, which cloth is actually cheaper than paper. I can talk to you about that if you want, if you have that. Either way, you want to use a PDF format because that's going to make it much easier for you to deal with at the end of the day. So we talked about size, we've talked about images, we've talked about font size, font style a little bit. And so now I'm just going to just briefly go over color. Color is so personal to everybody. People, love different colors or don't like different colors. But at the end of the day, if you're doing a poster and it's a Duke template, you may not have a lot of choice about color because Duke is blue and you might have a sea of blue. But even in that sea of blue, you can put in a spot of orange or you can put in a spot of red, with a header or with a bullet or something. You can make it punchy by doing some other things. But at the end of the day, you want to be very judicious and deliberate about color. Because as you see from the sample on here that you're looking at, if you put a lighter color on a lighter color, you can't read it. So a darker color works better on a lighter color. And a lighter color works better on a darker color. Kind of makes sense, but it doesn't make sense till it makes sense and you actually look at it. So just go with your visual. Try different things and see what works for you, what kind of colors work for you. But colors is something that you really want to make sure that you're on point with because dark and busy backgrounds don't really work a lot of times in a big room where you've got a lot of stuff on a poster. So you really need to be careful about that. The other thing is images. There is a handout that I'm giving Nicolette to distribute to you on image resources. I have about maybe 15 sources where you can go and look for various images because people want to use images and they may not know where to go to try to deal with the copyright for the images. And the Creative Commons is a good place to go because they have all kinds of permissions that they can give you to use images, but I've given you other resources as well that you can go to and look for images. And at the end of the day, if you want to use an image that belongs to someone else, just get permission and give permission, which I talk a lot about that in my longer presentation. So copyright is a whole different ball game. We're not talking about copyright today. I'm just mentioning it in relationship to images because it is important. You just can't take an image all the time and just use whatever you want to. Sometimes it works and it's not a big deal. but sometimes people will come after you about certain things that you use. So you just have to be very cautious in doing that. So at the end of the day, I would say, think about what you want to do. When you get ready to do a poster, just get in contact with me. And I think Nicolette has my information on how to get in contact with me, and we can actually, virtual means nothing to me. We can do it virtually. We can sit down and do it. I've done it tons of times. It may take more than one session to do, especially if we're starting from the ground up to get your ideas. But I would say just come with an idea. If you have pictures, have those available so we can get to them. If you've got stuff in a Word file, for example, have that sort of organized so that we can copy and paste and do things back and forth between the two. But I've done plenty of sessions with people who were nowhere near me in terms of doing posters. So we can definitely work that out. Like I say, if you have a vision for the poster, I can try to make it a reality. So I'm going to go to the next screen and just show you a couple of things before we get out. This is a standard sort of a template that you may have seen all over the medical center. That if you're going to do a poster as a nurse, or maybe someone else, you've been given something that looks like this. The one that I have looks a little bit better than this. The template, I've kind of made it a little bit easier for you. But this is something typical that you probably have seen, and this is a 48 by 36. And this is a poster of a person who came to me, and they had kind of worked with it and done some stuff, and they wanted me to look at it and, make it a little bit cleaner, a little bit sharper. So this is the before, and this is the after. Before, after. So I think that it looks sharp in the after because we've done a few things. We put some headings in. We've given her some definition to the poster. And I think it's a little bit easier to read. You can kind of see what is what. The visuals are there. And it kind of draws you to the middle where the results are. You kind of see the results are kind of the sort of the focus here of the poster. So you can look and read the first sentence, maybe in the abstract, and then come down to your results and then go to your next steps. Not every poster will have every element in it. Some elements will be different. You might not have a reference. You might have acknowledgments. You might not have lessons learned. You might have other things, but you at least need to know the sections or have in your mind kind of sections that you want to do. And what I do with a poster, I don't show it in this presentation, but in my longer presentation, I have made a format at the bottom of the poster, right down here at the bottom of a poster in the corner where that reference is, where you can actually put a picture of yourself, your email address, and a little bit of biographical information for you that fits right down in the corner. I made a template that people can use so that they don't even have to tell people who they are, or they can just go and say, oh, that's Nicolette. This is her email address. And I can pop off and go look at somebody else's poster. She looks lovely in that picture. I see something about her, and then I'm going to go off and pop off. So that's something too that I can do and work with you if you want to do that.
Thank you so much, Beverly. That was very informative, and I really appreciate you coming back on the program and talking about the posters with us today.
Thank you so much for offering me the opportunity. And I look forward to all of you people who want to get those posters done. All the nurses, you rock, by the way. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.